around in little trucks where they roast them. And
Okay. Hello. Welcome to H3 Health, Hope, and Happiness. Brother Scott was just finishing his supper while he's talking to me and telling me a story about Japan. But here we are.
we're going to have to learn the difference between live in 5 seconds and live in 5 minutes, brother.
Yes. I was a little light on the explanation there. Live in 5 seconds, I meant to say. All right. Well, what are we going to talk about tonight? I think you have an agenda, right?
Yeah, I do, about this for sure. I just
Nice.
excuse me here. I was fighting with my computer, and as amazing as that is, I can work up a sweat fighting with it. I think just by frustration rather than physical exertion. But you know how that goes. Anyway, so yeah, we're going to talk about workplace wellness, and it's something that's been really important, and especially post-COVID, with people trying to figure out, during COVID, people had to do whatever they could. Businesses that were open, they had to pretty much accept whatever staffing conditions the government laid down, or the health, board, but depending on who, lots of, like, restaurants had different rules, and sporting facilities had different rules, and
lots of external constraints on their operations. Yes. Yeah.
That's right. But now that those have been lifted, a lot of people are talking about or addressing with their employers, where do we go from here? And it's still ongoing. We've been out of COVID for a while. Well, no, it's not over, but we've been out of the lockdowns for a while. But employees and employers are still feeling out how. I was talking to a fellow in Texas, and he worked for Apple, and he was explaining how that, even a company as big as Apple, they're still in discussions about can they work at home? They have this big, beautiful campus where they're all supposed to work. Billions of dollars went into that facility. And after COVID, a lot of people found they were as or more productive working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And so, companies are trying to deal with that. You work a lot with employers and employees. Have you encountered that out and about in the world?
I believe now that most employers were forced to have the situation where people worked remotely and thought the worst, right? Thought it would be horrible and productivity would go down and people be slacking and blah, 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 that kind of a thing. But the reality that most share is that the work productivity levels stayed just fine, right? Stayed, in some cases, got better, right? Because the person had just more freedom in terms of operating their day, and especially for moms looking after kids, right? It's still the moms who bear the most of the child care type things, and getting kids to dance and getting kids to dentists and doing all those kind of lovely things. And so they were even more productive because they weren't stressed out about having to leave something or negotiate that they couldn't be there in the office at given hours. So it is certainly paid off in terms of that it works well. I'm sure there's the odd exception, right? That there is somebody who just, for whatever reason, doesn't work when they're not under the scrutiny of somebody else. But in most cases, people who are engaged want to contribute, and they can just find more ways to do that and be flexible in their day.
Well, and that's exactly right. And there's been some really big companies that have pioneered and changed the way they do business. Buffer, which is a big software development company, has something they call a remote first approach. And that allows employees to work from anywhere, their choice. They have no set working hours, and they embrace asynchronous communication. And if you've been going to school during the whole, or had a child or a loved one in college or university, or even some places high school, you'll know the difference between in-person classes and asynchronous classes, where the classes are recorded in video, and you can take them whenever you have time to take them. Well, yeah, you're on a schedule, but you know, if you watch them at 5 a.m, because that's when you're up, then that's whatever. And so Buffer and a lot of other companies, and I found this really interesting because in our company, you communicate by video, by asynchronous communication a lot, right? You let it, and I think it's great because when I get on working on a project, I can wait, I can finish that project and then watch your message when I'm done. I don't have to, stop what I'm doing, get your message, which may have nothing to do with what I'm doing at the moment, and then go back to it. So I find it really useful. And a lot of people, Buffer's example, their productivity has gone way up, letting people like to work. Like you said, it's not everyone says, oh, I'd go on permanent holiday. Well, not a lot of people actually do that, right?
No, work
So
is like essential to our nature, right? In terms of being of value to other human beings and making a difference in their lives. I think everybody wants to do that, wants to contribute, wants to make a difference in other people's lives, right?
yeah, and there's so many options. And what's the average people work nowadays? Like, I know our work week theoretically has gotten smaller, but more people have taken on second jobs, or what's popular in social media now is a side gig, right? Everyone has a side gig in addition to their job. So I think we're working a lot more. The studies that I've seen show that we are in fact working more, not less. That the whole idea behind the Industrial Revolution and utopian society was that machines were going to take over, automation was going to take over, and we would just live in this wonderful utopian place where we had free time to recreate and learn. And yeah, we're just not those critters, are we? We just,
No, no,
yeah.
no. I think
But it sounds nice.
what's that? It sounds great. It sounds great. Although the learning, I think that there is, and I can only speak for myself, but I spend definitely a lot more time learning in my off hours than probably I've ever done, right? And just I'm fairly interested in things, but to do that research in the evenings and the mornings, that kind of a thing, that is that is really enjoyable for me and makes me, I think, more productive in my normal working day, right? Even if it's just an anecdote that you have to share with somebody, that you meet them in their world and they're an architect and you learn something about architecture in a book you read or a movie you watched or a course that you took, kind of a thing, that you have a connection with them. You say, oh yeah, yeah, and that kind of a thing, right? You have a way to connect and um, and engage them more fully as well, right? So
But again, you've hit it right on the head, and that's one of the big things that companies are starting to do to improve workplace wellness is to include education, and not in the sort of mandatory, you have to take this WMIS course, or you can't work, or those kind of things. But a lot of companies now offer employees opportunities to either take their own courses. Google does that, for example. Salesforce, if you work for Salesforce, which is good because you have to study a lot to use Salesforce, they offer free training, paid. Like during your day, you can pick the courses you want and take those courses. And again, it's far from hurting productivity. It's increasing productivity. It's increasing employee retention. Employees feel that they're getting benefits beyond their wage, and so companies are really finding that worked. And when I looked at, so I searched all of the things that were going on for workplace wellness, and then I looked for case studies, and it's amazing how many companies are spending a lot more resources on workplace wellness. Post COVID, the landscape has really changed. It used to be a fancy company car or a weekend in Maui, or those kind of sort of Wolf of Wall Street kind of perks. I've never seen that movie, but I've seen enough clips of it. I think I've seen the movie. And but that's changing. Companies are working with their employees for a quality of life situation, and it's really exciting. Value driven is something that a lot of companies are looking at. Patagonia has a leadership program where they encourage members of their team to engage in leadership, learning, and opportunities, both volunteering and at work, especially in the area of environmental issues, because Patagonia is an outdoor sports. What would you outdoor wear? company. They make other things too, but again, things leading to higher job satisfaction. So there's a lot of focus on wellness in the workplace and job satisfaction.
And
Good old
even
Microsoft. Sorry.
more so than just job satisfaction, it's also life satisfaction, right? Like
Yeah.
there's a hunger to learn, that they have the support through their caring employers to do that, but that also relates to their whole experience of life and their whole enjoyment of life, right?
Absolutely. And that work-life balance is a whole new area well, not, I don't want to, it sounds negative when I say it that way. It's not a new area in human resources, but it certainly has much greater focus in human resources and company culture and company development is really balancing that work-life balance. HubSpot, for example, HubSpot, they've got their fingers in it, tons of digital communication and customer management, that sort of thing. They have a really flexible vacation policy. They can take vacation and they don't have to worry about accrued days off. They basically can take their holidays and then they just make up that time. And so they don't have to, if they have a wedding come up or they're worried about, next year my daughter's going to get married, I have to work a bunch of overtime to accrue the holidays. And they're really looking at the motivation. HubSpot saying, that's not a great, life work balance. If you feel so stressed out for something that should be, you're rejoicing, and as a company we should be rejoicing that your family's engaged in, something that's very important to them. We should support that. We shouldn't be making you jump through hoops and doing that. And as you said before, people just generally don't take advantage of these things if they understand that it's in place as a benefit to the team, right? Like if it's something that I think from the research, if it's not something that really addresses a need of the team and it's something imposed from above, then it tends not to improve wellness. And there's a whole area of leadership, the research, positive leadership. There's a whole field of that called, what's it called?
Servant leadership.
Yeah. There's what's it called? Yeah, it's positive leadership. There's a few different types of positive leadership. Some great examples. Salesforce is another example. The CEO of Salesforce emphasizes well-being, offering benefits, paid time off, equal pay for equal work, those kind of things. Microsoft is another, Google. We see a lot of sort of the cutting edge companies making these moves, but so are our factories, so are production companies. Post-COVID, it's not limited to sort of those, really nimble digital corporations. It's spreading out through different types of company. And there is some really cool programs. Catch Me at My Best. Hilton Hotels, among their employees, gratitude. We talk about the value of gratitude a lot, right? And so employees, there's a challenge called Catch Me at My Best, where employees are encouraged to catch fellow employees doing an amazing job.
That's
and then
awesome.
To share that with a corporation, and the corporation makes a big deal out of that moment when that employee was at their best and serving their clients and the corporation in the best possible way. Nice. And so it encourages from both sides, right? Because the employees are encouraged to give that praise to another person, say to them, that was amazing. I just saw you handle that so well. That shared gratitude, that team building, but also sharing it with a corporation, so the corporation can, instead of reward it, celebrate it. And I think that's what we're seeing, right? The corporations are starting to understand that they don't have to give a little more cheese. They have to, genuinely feel gratitude for what that employee's given them and their clients, which is exciting, I think.
I think so too. I agree. Like appreciation is huge, even if it's not a coworker, even if it's term of had a great meal at a restaurant, or the barista made you a little flower on your cappuccino or whatever, right? Whatever it is, that way, anytime that you can show us appreciation and gratitude for what they've done, I think that's there's huge value in that, right? So,
That's fantastic. And companies are hiring this in mind. Tesla is a company that's really forward thinking, as you know, has been since its inception. They take very seriously looking for employees that not only can do the job, but align with their core values. And in that process, it's not so much as sort of towing the company line. It's very much about fit, right? That if they share core values and they're motivated and moving towards the same goals in a universal way, they're going to be much more satisfied with their job.
Yeah, makes sense.
You've worked with Tesla people. Do you find that they have a sense of purpose and shared value? Or
I think so. Yeah, I've had really good experience with Tesla folks that I've had the opportunity to interact with, and yeah, they've been good. You made me smile though when thinking of Tesla. I just got something in the mail today. I'm going to show you. Oh my goodness, where did I put it? Oh, I didn't bring it down here. I'll share it with you another time. Yeah, I didn't bring it down here, unfortunately, but I'll share it with you another time.
Okay, I'll remind you to talk to us about Tesla. Amazon has a great program called Career Choices, and that's where anyone in the organization can say, I want to be a district manager. This is an example. And so Amazon will help them through training and education move towards that goal. So they're really allowing people inside the corporation to be mobile and advance through the career choices that they would really like to make, which I think is amazing.
It is amazing. And Amazon, I try very hard to buy local, with everything I can to support local businesses. Oh my goodness. Sometimes it is just like a fool's errand though. I needed this plug-in thing that has a thermostat associated with it, right?
Right.
So I go to 7 different
Building those robots in your basement again, Al? Is that
yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah.
I just like that. The mad scientist. I needed this thing to make the other thing.
So okay, so anyways, I go to 7 different stores to find it because I want to support a local blah blah blah.
Shop local, of course.
So out of frustration, I say, okay, this isn't going to happen. So I go on Amazon on Tuesday to order it. Wednesday, it's at my door. Just like, how the hell do they do that? That's incredible, right? So anyway, just like incredible organization, how how effective and how efficient they are. It's amazing. So yeah.
As you know, I don't really sleep. And I've actually had an Amazon order arrive at my door 6 hours after I ordered it.
Wow.
Like, I don't even know, was there some person in a warehouse that Hail Married that package to a truck driver who was standing at the door to drive it down from Balzac? Isn't that where their fulfillment center is in Alberta, or one of them?
Yeah, I think it's just outside of it's close to Cross Iron Mills in that area. They got this huge warehouse there. So
yeah, I think the little town there is Balzac.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
But have you ever been there? I'd love to tour that facility.
I have not. No.
Have you ever seen the automated robots? When I was in Japan, Toyota had a great factory tour, and and this is 10, 15 years ago, and they had automated robots that worked. So there was live people on the floor and robots bringing them pieces. Basically the person would stick out their hand and the robot will be right there. The little truck, they don't look like, sci-fi. They don't look like a walking person. They're little trolley trucks that go places. Anyway, it'll be right there with the part they need. The whole thing is timed like this weird kind of Swan Lake dance. Pretty amazing stuff.
I've only seen videos, but never in person, right? And actually, if you look at the videos of Tesla, how they build cars at Tesla, whew, my goodness, it's just like a lot of the welding, a lot of the assembly type things are all robots. It's just flip it over, just incredible how and his, when you talked, when the point of the movie was that better than building cars. They're better at building machines that build cars, right? That's really the special sauce, is their ability to build the factory and the machinery in it to build better cars, right? So it kind of comes first, which, has a lot of merit to it, makes a lot of sense, right? So yeah.
Well, Toyota, speaking of cars, Toyota has their Kaizen philosophy. And, I've heard it mocked, and I've heard it, here, I've heard it criticized. And, there's certainly people who don't agree with it in Toyota. But it allows employees to give a lot of feedback on the manufacturing process. Like, anyone on the floor can shut the line down. And it's not like in the movie where it's, yes, you can shut the line down, but if you do, you're going to be pushing a broom for the rest of your life, right? They're really interested because they know that innovation and creativity is not limited to people with a certain type of degree or a certain type of background. And I really know that the people on the floor that contribute those ideas feel really honored and appreciated, even to be listened to, even if their idea isn't, implemented directly. Often, 3 or 4 ideas will come together, and there's a department that absorbs all of these ideas and looks at how they could be implemented. And it's just amazing how it motivates the staff to be engaged at all levels. At lunchtime, they'll be thinking about, well, that seems really awkward. How could we make that better? Which is an amazing thing, where, you're not just saying, look, my job is to, turn this bolt and twist this knob and, eat lunch and then go home when the whistle blows and forget about this nonsense.
Right. Well, I think you told me that even on their factory floors, they to make the experience better and more, that they could continue to do it, there'd be somewhere the person would be prone, kind of lying down, kind of a thing, as opposed to bending over and stressing their back, that kind of a thing.
Zero tension. It's how, like, in the dentist's office, I probably, you haven't, you're a good person, but I can never resist not, seeing how easy they move, because it looks like they just touch the thing, right? And it like shoots over, and it's a big heavy light, right? Or an operating light, and they can move it one-handed, or, and it's amazing. But it's all about how it's counterweighted and balanced, and the joints of the thing, it takes all the weight out of it. And so these armatures that the staff have, it's zero stress in their body. So they can be upside down and twisted around, but their bodies are completely supported. And these supports are made for them. It's not like a one size fits all. They're supported perfectly in what they're doing. The care, but again, it's not like it's some completely altruistic, and I don't want to take away from Toyota and all these other great companies, but it improves their productivity and it improves their bottom line. So that's simple.
Well, the relationship between the health of the employees or the health of the team members and the health of the company is a pretty direct relationship, right?
Well, we're biased because, I mean, that's the foundation of what we do, is that, and that's been your philosophy since before I knew you, obviously, is that healthy teams are the most important asset for any company, right? And that's what they should invest in, that first, because it all comes down to, it doesn't matter how big and fancy the equipment is. If the person running it is depressed or physically, in pain, you're not going to get the best work. It doesn't matter where else you put money. And tonight's show, when I really started to research it, people are getting on board with that. Big companies, because it used to be, I remember reading The Entrepreneur's Myth, and the philosophy there is hire the least qualified person you can for the job. The person should just barely be able to do the job, because they will accept the lowest possible pay and they will be grateful for that job. Right? I'm paraphrasing, but that was the philosophy. And I'm like, whoa, that's not only cold, but because he was saying, if you hire somebody with a whole bunch of extra skills, they're not going to be happy with that job. They're going to want a better job. So what are they going to do? Sorry.
Sorry, finish your thought. And then I have something I want to share. What are they going to do? I was
just going to say that, they'll leave. And so you'll be hiring again. And then the cost of hiring, the time it takes, and So it wasn't, again, it wasn't about cruelty or not caring. It was the bottom line.
Yeah.
For the company to stay viable, we can't hire a new staff every year for that job.
No, the
So
cost of
hire
turnover
somebody
is
who's
huge.
just going to be grateful to be working, and they'll stay. Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Have you ever met Mitch Lawson from Catalyst?
Oh, I think you've introduced us before, but I've never talked to him.
Well, he loves this podcast. I think it's 99.9 or something is the name of the podcast. And he listens to lots of different things. And one story he shared that I've had him share it again because I liked it so much, was about in the transition in the Air Force from prop machines to jets. Did I tell you this already?
No, go ahead.
Oh, anyways, they did this, they took basically the measurements of the pilot crew, like, however many pilots there's 100 pilots, let's say, and they took all their measurements, their arm reach, their height, their, how far they could reach with their legs, those kind of things, right? And so then they went and figured out the average of that and built the cockpit to fit the average, right? And so this was built for the average person, right? And so when they had the pilots in there and they were using them, their performance wasn't very good at all. So they started doing a little more analysis on it. And these average configurations kind of a thing, it only served, it was I think there was 10 different variables, and that it only helped 2 of the 10 type pilots, kind of a thing, right? So they had to make the controls customizable, and all of a sudden the performance went up. Their ability to fly the machines well and function and do the associated task went way up, right? And it was just obviously the one size fits all type of an approach really isn't that valuable an approach, right? It doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. I mean, we're all unique human beings, and they have to fit us, instead of we're trying to mold ourselves into something that's not suitable for us, right? So yeah.
Well, and that was one of the things that came up in the search, is that workplace ergonomics, and there's the word for it. Alan has credentials in human resources as well as employee benefits, but what's that? The whole field of not just ergonomics, but making sure the human being's environment fits with their task. I can't remember what it's called. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I thought it was ergonomics, but yeah, okay.
Well, ergonomics handles the physical, right? But there's another word for when it's the environment and the sound level and the psychological.
Oh, okay, yeah. What is that? Okay, I don't know.
That's our homework. We'll look that word up.
Yeah, exactly.
So ergonomics is part of it, and ergonomics used to be the only thing. And I remember when that first came in, carpal tunnel spawned a whole industry, really, because anyone working with a computer would find that pretty soon they couldn't work with a computer anymore, a mouse, right?
Yeah.
And of course the first treatments were pretty brutal, major operations that could leave you crippled, and that's pretty heavy duty, that to keep doing your job you have to risk being crippled for life. So yeah, luckily that's changed. But the articles that I was looking at were saying that a lot of companies, interestingly enough, in parts of the world, not technology but culture, things like feng shui, and in Hindu cultures there's another name for it. Basically it's like energy flow. It's workplaces are designed to have the most beneficial energy for employees. So I'm not, tonight's not the night to discuss how valuable that is. Lots of people think it's really valuable. Other people think it's hookum. The point is those cultures were already looking at how an environment dramatically affects how people perform.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so in those cultures, we've seen a lot of development, right? And Toyota and places in Asia, places in India, in those areas, and our culture coming out of it sounds like I'm always hacking on the Industrial Revolution, but that was very much there was just a really cool set of photographs going through social media. A photographer in the US went around to factories. Did you see those? And photographed the child laborers sort of at the turn of the century, like
Mm.
these big machines, and these little kids are like hanging off the levers and trying to reach the pedal. Of course they got mangled and killed, and it was horrible. But the point is that there was no consideration for the human body or will or spirit. It was just make it work, and make it work until you can't, and then somebody will take your place. And
Mm.
that philosophy has had to change a lot to where we are now, where companies in some ways have been forced, right? That human rights have increased, concern over, and simple truth that health and well-being in your workforce directly relates to profit, right? And
Mhm.
and the viability of your company. So I think we've come a huge distance where we've gone from that, where human beings are just a cog in the machine. And growing up, I heard that,
Yep.
right?
Yep.
That your job is just to be a cog in the machine and do your part and do it well, and be respectful and take value in your place in the machinery, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
And thankfully, that's not a speech I hear very much anymore.
No, no. And just, to share from our friend Dr. James there, he's talking more about in a physical, emotional, mental health type status, but he's talking about as is the habitat, so goes the inhabitants, right? That the
Exactly.
two are related, right? And so, and it's kind of even at the cellular level, right? If the habitat is a good place for your cells, then they are going to thrive. Your mitochondria are going to produce energy. Your body is going to function that much better if that habitat is appropriate and helpful and healing, for you at a cell level, and even at a or extending to a human level, extending to a community level, right? As the habitat is, so go the inhabitants. So yeah, which I think makes really good sense. Yeah.
And anyone who's ever kept goldfish for more than a weekend knows that's true, because if you put goldfish in a small bowl, they stay small. You put them in a bigger container and carp grow massive, like giant. My mother was a goldfish, I won't say nut, but a passionate, uh,
Aficionado.
yeah, yeah, kind of like Corolla and my dad were with horses. But she built a huge tank in our house that had to have bulletproof glass. She contracted some company that built armored vehicles, and this glass was 6, 8 inches thick or something because of the water pressure. And she
Mm.
built the tank herself and sealed it all up with marine stuff and paint. And the little goldfish that used to be in sort of a tank, they quadrupled in size. Well, then she decided that they weren't so happy in there, so she built it by hand, this massive outdoor pond in her front yard, and it would have been 8 feet deep and probably 14, 15 feet across. And of course, when she would put them out there, they got much bigger still. And these are just ordinary goldfish, right? And
Wow.
nothing had changed except, as you said, their environment changed, and only a little bit, just the dimensions.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
the organism's body, we're not talking about 1,000 years evolution or 10,000 years. We're talking about the same goldfish,
Yeah.
right?
Wow. Mhm.
Just grew. And I definitely think people, I don't know if we're going to grow any bigger, even if we have more space, but we certainly, our hearts and our souls grow bigger when we have more metaphorical space to grow. Don't you think?
I think that makes that well said there, Scott Sweetman. Very nice.
Thanks, brother. So, uh, LinkedIn, you know who LinkedIn is, right?
Sure.
They have a really cool program, and you and I are firm believers in what this program supports. It's called In Day, IN capital DAY, and
Okay.
In Day is an employee can take a day off to volunteer,
Mm.
and it doesn't. There's no like there's no sort of, well, you have to be with us 4 years and you have to do this and fill in 18 forms and those types of things. And they believe that their employees contribution to social programs builds two things. It builds both internal and externally. It builds teamwork and growth and develops a sense of belonging and pride internally. And externally, it exposes the community to their healthy, cooperative, caring culture.
Mm,
And the community responds.
beautiful. Yeah, that's awesome.
I know in Japan that employees have to be really careful where they wear their uniforms. Like when I first went to Japan, a Toyota employee could go into a bank and get a loan just with the Toyota uniform.
Mm,
I'm not kidding. I'm
really? Yeah.
serious.
Yeah.
If they were an employee of Toyota, they could go into a bank. That's partially because Toyota owned the bank, but they have to be really careful. Like if they wear their uniforms, like in the red light district or something, that is impossible. Like
Mm,
it ain't gonna happen. But when they do volunteer work or things like that, they're allowed to wear the Toyota emblem,
mm,
and that's because Toyota is very, very strong in their beliefs. They have a zero tolerance policy. If any employee is ever caught under the influence of any alcohol and driving, they are terminated.
mm.
Period.
Wow.
And that's just, it's real. Like they do not drive if they drink, and even like vice presidents that could probably get away with almost anything. Their culture is just no. We believe that drunk driving hurts the community. There's never a need for it. If you're going to drink, stay where you are. Stay with a friend. Get a cab, and that's spread out into the community. And it's been so proactive that drunk driving in the regions where Toyota has factories and head offices has gone way down
Mm,
because it spreads outside the company,
mhm.
right?
Wow.
Because, if Toyota is willing to stand behind this, regardless of your rank or influence in the company, then why shouldn't we? If it's so good for them and so good for the community, and it becomes the culture of those areas. And I thought
Yeah,
that was so cool to watch.
me too. That's amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think we're in an exciting time for the development of workplace wellness through caring employees, right? That's a word that we use. So it's a bit loaded for us, but that's what it comes down to is employers and owners, or if you work for yourself, you have to realize you're your biggest asset. And I was thinking about that today, right? Like our business brings together companies with 3 or more employees usually, but there's a lot of people that now are independent, post COVID, and they're working on their own. And those people need a lot of support too, in terms of realizing that they are their absolute most essential asset, right?
No question.
And so I think it's really timely for us to be talking about this. Apple's got a great program called their Blue Sky program, and that's a little bit like the Toyota Kaiten program, where it encourages employees to submit ideas. And again, there's a celebration of that success, but also a share in, and I think the details are top secret, or at least not publicized. But the employees that present ideas that are used, there's some sort of benefit sharing. I don't know if it's stocks, I don't know if it's holidays, but there's actual sharing in the company's success. Again, not so much the value of the reward, but the idea that when the company profits, we all profit.
Mm,
When you profit, the company profits. You can't separate the wellness of your employees from the wellness of your company.
mhm.
And I've got 5 pages of studies and many, many more that I just didn't bother looking at, that really, really make it clear 2 things: that employee wellness and workplace wellness is what counts. From maybe it always has, but post COVID, all successful companies are learning that.
Mhm.
And the innovation is really exciting, how they're coming up with ways to improve wellness in their workforce. You deal a lot with companies. Have you seen some interesting ways that companies are helping with employee wellness?
Well, and in terms of like supporting them to volunteer, there's local companies that certainly do that as well, right? So contribute to a cause of themselves and out of their pocketbook as well, right? Where they
Mhm.
share, the individual employees will provide their resources and the company will match, kind of a thing, with something that they collectively believe in, right? And the collective belief of what's best for the community and what's going to help for the community is huge, right? That's a big deal, right? And then just a lot more openness to kind of making the work, um, the work is important that it gets done, but making it available in a way that the people doing the work can still optimize their overall life experience as well, right? They can meet the work commitments, but they also have the capacity to kind of take off when they need to take off to take care of their children or take care of their medical appointments, or those kind of things, right? It's not such a rigid between these hours, right? um
Google has a really, sorry, interrupt. I just want to just
Yep,
comment
yep,
on that. That
yeah.
Google has a really interesting program where they allow employees, and this is a leadership initiative coming right out of Google's top leadership, is that employees can dedicate 20% of their time to their own personal projects, work
Mm,
projects. So
wow.
in addition to volunteering, they allow employees, if an employee says, I really think that I can improve this, or I really think that this needs work, they can decide themselves to devote 20% of their total working time to that project or those projects.
Wow.
And yeah, I was a little blown away when I read it. Like 20% of your time sounds like a big number. But
That's huge.
according, yeah, right. But according to Google, it really allows the team to deploy itself on the most needed problems, or the problems or the areas where that individual's particular skills maybe are unknown to leadership. So what it's doing is it's making everyone a manager 20% of the time in terms of determining how their skills, their passion could be best applied to growth of the company. And I thought, wow, that's a great idea.
Yeah, you bet. I mean, you think your efforts with your purpose in life, or as what you perceive as your purpose in life, with the purpose of life of that agency or that employer, right? I mean, you get a lot closer alignment to that, and kind of like fulfill what's meaning for you in your life via your work habitat, your work flexibility. That's amazing. Yeah.
Well, I think trust is part of that wellness equation too, because you and I both know when we teach firearm education to youth, sometimes we get youth that have had trouble and they're not doing so well in school, those things, and part of what we do is teach them a safe way, the right way, and then there's a level of trust where we
Yeah.
say, okay, we're going to trust you to do this, and we're going to allow you to do this. If you muck it about, the trust is gone.
Yeah.
But if you follow the rules and you keep your head on straight and you stay focused, then we're going to keep trusting you and you can keep participating in this thing you want to do. And you wrote a book on the benefits to building communities through the shooting sports, but we really see how that little bit of trust will turn problem kids into productive kids in terms of just having somebody say, yeah, I trust that you can do this and that your head and heart are in the right place, and I'm going to extend that trust as long as keep painting between the lines. And that's an amazing thing to witness, isn't it?
It is. It is. Yeah. Very true. I
Yeah,
mean, we've certainly had some people who were kind of didn't fit in their school, or didn't fit in other environments, but they finally kind of found a home with us, and a place, a habitat where they could excel, right? Like, and do really well and be really safe, right? Because firearms can be dangerous if they're used inappropriately, and you get that when they've got the basic skills down, and they stay focused in applying those skills, well, they can be super safe and very effective, right? So yeah.
absolutely. And I'm really just impressed by this Google 20%, because the idea that, you know, any person in the corporation can take the thing they're the most passionate about or feel that they're the best fit for and apply themselves to that with the gratitude and the backing of the corporation, that must be incredibly well. We have that situation in our job, so I don't want to say it. That must be incredible. That is incredible. We don't formalize it that way, but we have that freedom to do that. And I would think that any workforce that allows their employees the opportunity to express their own individuality, their own intelligence, their own creativity, skills that maybe, I know that I've worked for people in past jobs for years, and then suddenly I see them doing something and I'm like, whoa, when did you learn how to do that? And they're like, I've been doing it for years, because we don't know everything about a person, right? So I think there's an openness, a trust, a willingness to learn and share that has to go into workplace place wellness. But I think it all starts with a desire, right?
Yes. Yeah. No, that makes really good sense. Back to our friend who I was telling you about from Catalyst,
Yes.
they're all about finding opportunities for differently abled people, right? How,
Mm-hmm.
we would regard perhaps as disabled, but differently abled people, and getting the match with their skill set and their interest with an employer's skill set, what that employer needs. So matching up the need the employer has to serve their clients well with the abilities, the differently abled abilities that these unique individuals have, right? And that's a beautiful thing, right? So, yeah.
Well, and and that was the context that you introduced me to Catalyst, and we were talking about workforce development and our community wellness program. But for me, where I was perfectly healthy, and then due to an illness, ended up in a wheelchair and a whole bunch of rather severe health problems that are, I think, rather quickly. But people think 10 years is a long time. But given death, which is permanent, and 10, 15 years of recovery, I'm doing great. But if people don't give you a chance to adjust, because it does take adjustment, right? So, and anything that you have to do in a wheelchair is more difficult than if you didn't have to do it in a wheelchair. That's pretty
Sure.
much right. So if you're incredible at something and then you get sick or you get hurt, or you're born with that particular challenge, it doesn't mean that, I believe now from a firsthand experience, that you're somehow less than. It means that you have a particular challenge to overcome and adjust. People
Definitely.
also have to give you that opportunity, and I think
Yeah.
that's so much of what the research and tonight's show's been on, is it's a two-sided street, right? There has to be an opportunity for people to be their best, and then people have to step up and work towards being the best self they can be, which is
Yeah.
an amazing when it works. And I think when it's done right, it almost always works, right? I mean, people can take a side street, or there's lots of things that can go wrong, but yeah. This program's in Lethbridge, right? Catalyst is
Yes.
in Lethbridge.
Allison Rutley, yes, yeah. And Mitch Lawson and Michaela and Marie are the folks that kind of do the matchup between what the needs are of the employer or the agency and the skill set of the folks, right? And so and they're very passionate about doing that. So it's exciting. Yeah.
Well, and I think it's again a two-way street, because I know, um, grew up on a ranch, shooting and hunting, and it was protection of our stock. And then when I got sick, I took the twins to the range, the LFGA shooting sports facilities, and it was you and Rick who kept saying, "Oh, come on, get out here, give it a try." And I was really apprehensive to do that. I felt that it just wasn't something I could do anymore. But I was given the opportunity. I was encouraged to do it. Then I did it, and now I encourage other people, and I'm an encouragement for other people to get out there, get involved, chair, no chair, other disabilities, and we have all kinds of people who get into the sport with all sorts of things that need extra care or attention, or they need to some help or work with. But the point is, I think that it's that knock-on thing, right? That given an opportunity, it's like workplace wellness. The Not everyone reaches their potential at the same time or in the same way. But when someone reaches their potential, I think, and I know that you've shared this in the past too, they radiate a resonance or an energy that encourages those people around them to grow and to develop in their own way, not to copy them or,
No,
but you know what I'm saying.
there are 1,000 ways, right? So yeah,
A
exactly.
thousand ways to kiss the earth.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Had
Well,
to put
we're a little bit over. Sorry.
I said had to throw a roomie in there, right? So yeah.
Yeah, you made me think that winter's coming. I always like reading Rumi and other poets in the winter time. There's just something about winter, I think, that makes us just a little bit extra thoughtful.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
it's important. Just as a side note, I saw today a little note saying that city of Lethbridge is not saying that we're going to run out of drinking water, but they are saying the water supply is much lower than it normally is. So
Mhm.
people can interpret that any way they want. But water, as you know, is a fundamental to health and wellness and welfare and living and breathing. So yeah, I always recommend to people that they always stock up a little bit of water. I know from the disasters I've had happen around me, water is one of the first things that people need. So just
Definitely.
thought I'd throw that in there as we wrap up our discussion on workplace wellness.
Well, that was a fun chat, Scott. Thanks for bringing that topic to the table. So that's awesome. Thanks.
Thank you, and I look forward to hearing what you got from Tesla in our next show. You can bring that in, and we can talk about that. I won't forget. And did we decide? Are we going to talk about your MRI maybe next week?
Sure, why not? I don't know what we got. I can like show the report and we can show the video that Michelle prepared of it. So yeah, we could certainly talk about that. I mean, on one respect, the report says it's unremarkable. Well, that's kind of,
That, but in a test, that's what you want.
yeah,
That
that's
just
what I
means no
want.
deformities or
Exactly,
abnormalities.
exactly. Yeah.
But I think it's important because in our community we have an incredible opportunity with the MRI resources we have right here,
Yes.
like way punching above our weight in many respects in that as a community. And I know a lot of people have some misunderstandings about MRIs. They're not particularly comfortable, but they're much more comfortable than a lot of tests both you and I've endured.
Let's talk. That sounds good. We'll have a conversation about it last week and I'll share my experience. Okay.
That's what I'm hoping because I think it will help people. So,
Excellent.
and we're all about that. My very good friend Alan Friesen, the acapellist, myself, Scott Sweetman, here all about the health, the hope, and the happiness. See us next week, same time, same place.
Get 'em, Matson. Keep well.